Hi, welcome back to class. And this week we are going to be moving into social policy. And this is actually an area of political science that I find to be the most interesting, this and public administration. This is the area where most people have debates and expectations and conversations about politics. And this could be a very broad area of study. So you study everything from housing to law, how law is carried out, to education. Pretty much any area of life is affected by social policy, and so it's a very broad area of study, but it's also very fun and interdisciplinary. So looking at social policy, you use aspects of sociology, psychology, of course political science, and history, and you wrap them together and you try to come up with solutions for problems. And this is where it gets really interesting, is once a problem is identified, there's a few different ways that a policy could move to address it. So the first one is to try to eliminate the problem, which is usually very difficult to do, but some policy does seek to eliminate a particular problem. Another way to deal with a problem is to ameliorate it, so it's to lower the problem, have it be less of an issue, and so it tries to nip at problems at the edges and hopefully address them that way. That's the most common way to deal with social policy is amelioration, which is, of course, trying to address the problem in smaller steps. Then there's an idea called maintaining the status quo, and that's when you decide to really not do anything about the problem. It's just letting your present trends continue. And this is a conscious choice, so maintaining the status quo is not doing nothing. You're choosing to actually let the present trends continue. That's another common way to deal with a problem, is just, I guess, kick it down the road, and hopefully it either gets addressed by itself or someone takes care of it later on. And then the last way is to take a problem and try to make it worse, which you generally don't see too much of that, but lately you've been seeing a little bit of that with politics. An example would be with the Affordable Care Act. That's addressing a problem of dealing with people who are uninsured. So the ACA has a odd name. The Affordable Care Act does much more than just provide insurance at a cheaper rate for people who couldn't afford it before. What it was designed to do was ameliorate the problem of the 47 million people who didn't have health insurance. And it did that by providing tools to buy insurance with subsidies. And so it took over 20 million people off of that, still leaving, there's a gap where there's people who are uninsured. The new administration actually has taken active measures to try to make sure more people become uninsured under the ACA. So they took a policy of making a problem worse through this year of the exchanges, where they're going to keep them open for a shorter period of time. Also, they looked at the ability of funding higher risk pools and threatened to cut that, and that actually has risen the price of everybody's insurance, whether they participate in the Affordable Care Act or not, because of the present administration's idea of how to deal with this particular policy. They decided to take the route of making it worse, and it's actually a very they're publicly stating that that's what they're trying to do. So they say they're trying to kill the act by making the problem worse. So I normally don't have many cases of this happening, but now, of course, in the last few months, we've started discussing this as a real case for making a social problem worse. And again, that's a policy of trying to move to having more people become uninsured. So that's an administrative choice for a policy that should be faithfully executed, but it's not. So like I said, it's a rare thing to see happen, but we are looking at that now. It's important to understand this because policy is affected by who is in charge of the administration. So this week, as we move through this discussion, I want you to look at social policy and try to get a deeper understanding of this. You're going to move on through the Module 11 discussion, so of course you're going to log on 3 different days and have a post to discuss the guard dogs discussion. Then you're going to read Chapter 10. This is the chapter on the policy, and complete the Chapter 10 quiz. And then I have a video with Brian Stevenson, and he runs the Equal Justice Initiatives. And that's actually, he's an attorney, and he discusses how certain people experience justice a lot differently than others. So he focuses on racial inequality in our justice system. And he has a TED Talk that's great. I recommend you watch it. It has the longest standing ovation of any TED Talk, and he discusses this. But in this class, we're going to look at an interview about a book he wrote. And then you're going to put the Dropbox on that and move on to the Module 12 discussion. Again, it's just one discussion topic this week, so it shouldn't be very difficult to get done. And so moving down, you'll see the quiz, the interview with Mr. Stevenson, and your initial post looking at the war on poverty. And for this, I want you to look at the evidence the text uses to point out that the war on poverty actually succeeded in reducing poverty. So I want you to get into that discussion and make sure your letter to the editor is published. So far, I've had one person from this class get theirs published. I have another class that I have face-to-face, and in that class so far, 3 or 4 students already have their letters published. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to combine the published letters from both classes so we can have, you guys can see what other people are doing in other classes, but I'd like to see a few more of you get letters published in this class. It's an easy way to get extra credit. And it's important you do this now because it takes a few weeks. The last student I had to get a letter published, it took over 11, I think it took 12 days for it to get put in the newspaper. So get them sent in, and once you do get confirmation that your letter is published, send me an email and I will give you extra credit. This isn't a very hard thing to get done, and it's actually quite a bit of fun. Students who have done this in the past love it. My first student in my face-to-face class who got hers published said she liked it so much she was going to submit more letters. So it might be a new hobby for you. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me, send me an email, and I will get back to you. Other than that, have a great week, and you'll hear from me next week. Thank you.